All right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, all you magnificent melon heads of the world. Happy Friday, everybody. Today is May 23rd, 2025. And it looks like tariffs are back on the menu, boys. At least that's according to the president and his Truth Social tirade this morning. By the way, memo to somebody at the Secret Service, you forgot to take away the president's phone last night because he is making a mess once again this morning. This time he's targeting the EU and Apple. First, let's talk about the EU. Trump went on a long-winded tirade, as he often does, and said basically he doesn't like what the EU has been saying. They've been trying to negotiate a trade deal or not negotiating a trade deal, depending on who you're talking. And, well, frustrated with the lack of progress, the president just said, screw it. 50% tariff on the European Union starting on January 1st. I'm sorry, not January 1st, June 1st. Well, look, the EU yesterday, they were in the news. They had supposedly sent a proposal over to the Trump administration, including things like labor rights, environmental regulations, energy contracts. But the EU had also prepared a suite of $108 billion worth of retaliatory tariffs if the negotiations didn't go well. And, well, it certainly appears that negotiations didn't go well because here we are this morning talking about 50% tariffs effective June 1st. Now, two things that stuck out at me when I was looking at this, and we'll show you later on in the show, June 1st, that is inside of 90 days. Remember the whole thing on April 9th when Trump supposedly surrendered and the bond market, took over the whole world and he blinked. Everybody said, okay, everybody goes back to 10% except China. While we're talking, you got 90 days. June 1st is not 90 days. June 1st is less than 90 days. And so I guess Trump is just saying, screw it. You're not even getting the 90 days. I don't like what you're saying. 50% tariffs. Oh, and by the way, the tariffs on Liberation Day that the European Union was hit with were a lot lower than 50% tariffs. So look, that means all these other countries that are out there now have to calculate what they can't see and what they can't estimate because, number one, you may not actually have 90 days. And number two, your tariffs might actually be going up higher than they were on Liberation Day and on April 9th when we lowered them to 10%. And so now the market has to reprice in all of this new uncertainty on top of the old uncertainty that it just finished pricing out. Oh boy, this is messy. Now, look, Trump had his first call, or the administration had their first call with Chinese representatives this morning also. This is the first time since that meeting in Geneva, which went very well as can be expected. So I don't know, maybe this is just posturing for the Chinese. But look, this is almost certainly going to drive the Europeans and the Chinese closer together. It's going to make a mess today. And right now, the market is reacting in your traditional flight to safety way. You've got bond yields are falling. People are running to bonds. You've got gold is rallying. Bitcoin is selling off like a risk asset would with other risk assets. This is very eerily reminiscent to that initial reaction to Liberation Day. Now, as my moderator Mish pointed out this morning in our morning call, which was plagued by technical issues, the initial reaction to Liberation Day was your traditional flight to safety. And then a few days later, the bond market started throwing a fit and all of those historical correlations broke down. So maybe that happens again, maybe not. But for right now, we are looking at your traditional safety trade. Now, also going on this morning, we've had Apple has been the recipient of the president's ire. President Trump is threatening 25% tariffs on Apple iPhones not made within the United States, which, according to my calculations, is freaking all of them. Look, Apple has been moving their production out of China because of the trade war. And the whole point of the trade war was not to spur new development and new fabrication and manufacturing in India. The whole point was to develop manufacturing in the United States. And while Apple said, I don't care, I'm moving from China to India now. The Indians love it. The president, not so much. And so President Trump said, you know what? Screw it. While we're talking about the European Union, let's talk about Apple too. 25% tariffs on Apple. Now, here's the thing. 25% tariffs on Apple for iPhones made in other countries. It's probably not going to get the job done. It's going to cost you more than 25% more to have those phones made in the United States, especially when you're including the upfront capital cost to get that manufacturing up and running. So iPhone's probably going to get more expensive, but don't worry, we finance iPhones now, and the key to higher prices is access to easy money and cheap debt. And so, most people are just going to be like, all right, the iPhone used to be $1,500, all right, now it's going to be what, $1,800, $1,900. It's a monthly payment. I don't care. That's kind of how that works. Also going on this morning, we've got a lot of talk in nuclear. Nuclear stocks are surging here this morning. President Trump is expected to issue an executive order mandating the rapid development of nuclear energy. You've got uranium stocks are surging on this anticipation. Nuclear companies, utilities are surging on this news. And I agree this is good news for nuclear, what's going on here, but I think there's a whole other story that people are not talking about, or I should say people are talking about it for different reasons that applies directly to nuclear, and not enough people are paying attention to this. Besides the executive order on nuclear power, yesterday's Supreme Court ruling that defended the president's ability to fire the head of the National Labor Relations Board and the Merit Systems Protection Board, that ruling is very important in this case as it pertains to nuclear energy. Now, look, everybody was talking yesterday about this and, is it a presidential overreach or isn't it? But a lot of people also zeroed in on the fact that the ruling by the Supreme Court specifically carved out the Federal Reserve to say the president can't fire the Fed. Some language about them being a uniquely quasi-public-private entity basically said you can fire independent regulators, but you can't fire the Fed, which kind of makes me wonder, who does the Fed actually freaking work for? Who runs that place? Could anybody fill me in on this? I'd love to know who is really in control. It sure as heck ain't the president, and it sure as heck ain't Jerome Powell. And it's arguably the most powerful institution in the world because they control the issuance and thus the value and availability of the world's reserve currency. They may not have a nuke button, but they do have an economic nuke, and nobody knows who runs it. That's a valid question. But back on the nuclear thing, okay, he can fire the NLRB. He can fire the head of the Merit Systems Protection Board. He can't fire the Fed. But nobody mentioned the NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission is an independent regulatory agency, much like the NLRB, and they historically have not been fired by the president unless gross misconduct for cause, that kind of stuff. Well, yesterday's ruling made no mention of the NRC. And if it made no mention of the NRC, then therefore it seems only reasonable that the executive or that the president now has the ability to fire NRC commissioners. That is huge for the nuclear industry because, in my opinion, the single biggest impediment to any expansion of nuclear power for the last 15 years has been the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Anybody who has worked in this industry and done anything involving the NRC and compliance, it is a libertarian's worst nightmare. I am talking about El Diablo Cinto Rojo, the devil of red tape. I mean, you cannot fathom the depths of the administrative hominis administratum. It's a whole new species over at the NRC. And so if the president can fire the NLRB head, maybe he can fire nuclear regulatory commissioners. And if he can do that, he can replace them with people who want new plants built, not people who do nothing but throw up more and more roadblocks to getting new plants built. Now, look, that is a double-edged sword. All right, number one, that could clear the way to finally getting some plants built economically and efficiently, something the United States has been unable to do. The last few nuclear construction projects in this country have been a debacle and have resulted in some of the biggest bankruptcies in history. So maybe we can fix that. But you got to be careful who you put in there because let's remember, guys, nuclear power is special and unique. And if we put somebody like, I don't know, Sam Altman or one of his little minions in charge over at the NRC, they're going to cut corners on safety. And that will be the worst thing that could possibly happen to the nuclear industry because an accident at one nuclear plant affects every nuclear plant everywhere. And so that's a double-edged sword. And the other double-edged sword there is President Trump's only going to be in charge for another 3.5 years. Who comes in next? If the president can fire the NRC commissioners and appoint pro-nuclear activists, then what's stopping the next a-hole who comes in from firing the NRC and putting the board of directors at freaking Greenpeace in charge? And then, congratulations, you have no nuclear plants. So I think, honestly, the Supreme Court ruling yesterday has more to do with nuclear power and has more impact on nuclear power than any executive order does, but that could, in the long run, come back to haunt them. Other stories going on this morning. We've got Nissan is considering selling their corporate headquarters in Japan. That's interesting going on there because there's one important detail about what they're talking about that shows that company has started to eat its own tail to survive. They need a deal and they need it fast or that company will not make it. And shocking result, a Microsoft-backed AI startup is about to go bankrupt after one of their debtors seized all their money because, surprised face, they're a fraud. Go figure. And speaking of AI frauds, just figured I'd mention that video I did yesterday about this groundbreaking study at MIT. Yeah, that was a hoax. That was all fake too. AI bros got a lot of egg on their face this morning. Hey, but number go up. Got a link down in the description to that video should you want to check that one out at the end of the stream. But first, let's shrink my big melon of a head and see what's going on in the market this morning. And don't forget that like button and that subscribe button for the YouTube algorithm if you're new here, because we do this one every single day. And right now, the S&P 500 is off by 86 points, 1.5% lower. And look, here's the Apple announcement. Here's the EU announcement. Truth Social taking the market down across the board this morning. Meanwhile, the Dow is off by 565 points ahead of the opening bell, 1.35% lower. Again, Apple and the EU taking everything down here. And the NASDAQ is off by 1.85%, 390 points in the red for the NASDAQ this morning. We got stocks are down across the board here in the States, but stocks are down abroad as well. Check out the German DAX here. We're down 2.6% in Germany. The FTSE in the UK, that's down by 1.1%. The French CAC 40 down almost 3%. We've got the IBEX exchange down 2.3% in Spain. European stocks are down across the board on this news, actually down more than the U.S. stocks are. That's interesting. We'll see how that plays out. Looking over at the U.S. dollar, we've got a weaker dollar this morning, currently off by 51 basis points. Pretty big move to the downside, 99.42 on the Dixie. Now, it's interesting when these True Social posts were made, the market initially, we saw the dollar weaken, then we saw a big strengthening, then it weakened again. You know, the market's not really sure what it wants to do on this news as far as Forex goes this morning. Looking over at the Japanese yen, we have got a significantly stronger yen this morning, 142.7. That is stronger by 1.3 yen to the dollar here. Again, guys, watch this. We've been watching this for about 2 weeks now. We have seen the yen almost every day for the last 2 weeks. The yen has strengthened. Watch that yen carry trade. We're only a few yen away from that all-important 140 level where we have bounced. Let's zoom out a little bit. We've bounced there a couple of times here. We bounced there in April, and we bounced in September of last year, also at that level. The yen wants to strengthen. That carry trade wants to unwind. And since we've been watching it all week, the Japanese 40-year JGB yield, we've been watching these long-term interest rates blow out in Japan as they've been talking about, can we slow down our monetary easing or not? Just worth pointing out this morning that we have had a big drop in the 40-year JGB this morning. That all came on this news of Trump and the EU. So as we've got a little bit of a flight to safety going on this morning, people are buying bonds for the perceived safety there. That has at least temporarily stopped this bleeding in the Japanese super long bond this morning. Now let's talk about our bonds. We are seeing a flight to safety here, guys. I mean, it's not a huge flight to safety, but we're seeing people move out on the yield curve as there is this unpredictable tariff thing going on in stocks. The 30-year Treasury lower by 5 basis points this morning, 5.013. Remember, guys, lower yields means people are buying bonds, sending their prices higher. The 10-year, 4.468, that's off by 8.5 points. The 2-year, 3.919, off by 8 points. And the 1 month is at 4.295. That one's actually up by a point and change here. So we've got a little bit of flight to safety in bonds. What about commodities? Gold having a good morning here. $62 higher for spot gold, $3,356, back above $3,300. That is 1.88% higher this morning. Silver also doing all right, up about 9 cents here, or 1/4%, 33.15. This is your traditional flight here, right? You got monetary value of gold going up higher here as people go for the ultimate safe haven investment. It's taking gold significantly higher. Silver, though, being held back by its industrial demand, worries about an economic slowdown. So silver's monetary value taking it a little bit higher, but the industrial demand is holding it back. Again, all correlations seem to be working this morning for now. We've got copper's lower by a penny. Put a pin in platinum. We'll be back to that one in a little bit. Palladium is lower by 3%. Crude oil down 1.3% here as the world again grips for a economic slowdown. Now, look, platinum is down by about $1 here, or about 1.1% lower. But interesting thing about platinum, I thought I would point out, I had both Bob Coleman and David Morgan on the channel over the last couple of days, two precious metals enthusiasts, two rather big names in the precious metal space. And both of them said that they were very bullish platinum. Now, this was over the last 2 weeks. You know, we were back around here when these guys came on the channel. And they both said the same thing, that they were investing in platinum, that it looked like a lopsided bet. The gold to platinum ratio was going all kinds of haywire. And since those guys came on the channel, look at the run that platinum has had. So Bob, David, excellent call, guys. Thank you for that one. Looking really good here. Now, I would also point out platinum has stalled this morning. But look where we stalled. Almost exactly the same level that we stalled back in May of last year. So platinum is up against some resistance in the chart here. If it does break out, not that great of a look here, but you know, look, platinum has been held down here for the last 2 or 3 years. Consider what gold has done. While platinum has done a whole bunch of nothing, platinum's got a lot of catching up to do. So if we break out of this level, maybe we actually do have a pretty good run in store for this one. So thanks again, Bob. Thanks again, David. And Bitcoin this morning, it was looking really good. We hit an all-time high yesterday. A couple of times we stalled out just below $112,000. And then, of course, Truth Social happened. And now Bitcoin behaving like a risk asset here, down about $3,000 here, $108,500. Now, when I say it's behaving like a risk asset here, this is important because Bitcoin has been shaking its traditional correlation recently. We have seen some days where Bitcoin behaves like a stock in the NASDAQ and it sells off or rallies along with risk, whatever direction the market is moving. But we've seen other days, especially days where there was pandemonium in the bond market, where Bitcoin behaved almost like an alternative safe haven. I'm saying almost. People love to jump down my throat when I say this. I'm just calling it like the market is showing us here, guys. So there has been some kind of shift going on beneath the surface in Bitcoin markets. I believe you have people in other countries who are trying to de-dollarize their reserves, who have very little choice. They can go chase gold up at $3,500, which is a perfectly good trade, by the way. You know, a lot of people are buying gold here, especially the Chinese, but I suspect some of them are moving to Bitcoin. And I also suspect a lot of them are starting to settle trade in Bitcoin. Remember, you got a lot of oil trade that is happening outside of the traditional finance system right now because of U.S. sanctions. Well, maybe Bitcoin is the medium of exchange after all. It's what the chart is showing us here, guys. Now, this morning, Bitcoin is behaving the same way Bitcoin behaved immediately following Liberation Day. We'll see if that holds up. Remember, after Liberation Day, Bitcoin did sell off a little bit. And then, of course, Bitcoin rallied like crazy coming out of that. So keep an eye on that one. All right, here's the actual story that's going on here this morning. Trump recommends 50% tariff on the European Union starting on June 1st. Let's see what he actually had to say on Truth Social. The European Union, which was formed for the primary purpose of taking advantage of the United States on trade, has been very difficult to deal with. So there he's kind of hinting that whatever the European Union offered yesterday, they did not like it. Their powerful trade barriers, VAT taxes, ridiculous corporate penalties, non-monetary trade barriers, monetary manipulations, unfair, unjustified lawsuits against American companies, and more have led to a trade deficit with the United States of more than $250 million a year, a number which is totally unacceptable. And I agree, Mr. President, that number is totally unacceptable because the U.S. trade deficit with the European Union is $250 billion, not $250 million. You forgot a couple of zeros this morning. Measure twice, cut once, Mr. President. I just throw it out there. 250 billion is the actual trade deficit with the European Union. Our discussions with them are going nowhere, again, suggesting the offer yesterday was not good enough in Trump's eyes. Therefore, I am recommending a straight 50% tariff on the European Union starting on June 1st. There is no tariff if the product is built or manufactured in the United States. You got to love this corporate speak. Thank you for your attention to this matter. That's just like when that boss that you hate puts at the end of the email, he says, thank you in advance right? Remember, thank you for your attention to this matter. That is the ultimate politely worded middle finger to end an email with, isn't it? Anyways, guys, the one thing I want to point out here is here's President Trump on Liberation Day with his placard. And I just want to zoom in. Let's see, we can't really zoom in all that much here. There's Mr. Orange. Look, European Union right here. They had a 20% reciprocal tariff on Liberation Day. So because he didn't like the offer that the European gave us, instead of 90 days going back to 20%, it's June 1st going to 50%. So if you're China, if you're Vietnam, Taiwan, Japan, India, South Korea, all the other countries that were on the placards on Liberation Day, now you've got to put this into your calculus of what it might look like if you try to play hardball at the table. And of course, President Trump has to put that into his calculus. He risks reigniting the bond market with this stuff this morning. So a lot of uncertainty has been injected into the market. And again, we won't spend too much time on this here, but just a reminder, this article in Bloomberg was yesterday. The EU sends new trade proposal to the U.S. in a step to secure deal. This is the proposal that Trump did not like. They mentioned a couple of things here. They're mentioning environmental standards, labor rights, gradually reducing tariffs to zero, procurement in energy, artificial intelligence. Okay, all kinds of, I guess that's the carrot that the European Union was offering. But the EU also brought a little bit of stick to the table. They said at the same time, the EU is moving forward with preparing countermeasures if negotiations fail to produce a satisfactory outcome. The 27-nation bloc has put together a plan to hit 95 billion euros or $108 billion of U.S. exports with additional tariffs in response to Trump's reciprocal levies and 25% tariffs on cars and some parts. And so that was the stick they brought to the table. I don't know what was the sticking point. I don't know what Trump specifically didn't like, but he did not like whatever the Europeans were offering. And it seems the Europeans held their ground, weren't willing to budge. And so Trump just throws a fit and says 50% tariffs on June 1st. And now the whole world needs to react to that. But it was not just the European Union. It was Apple as well. Trump threatens 25% tariffs on Apple if iPhones are not U.S. made. 25% probably not enough to get it done, but that's another big one. President Trump threatened Apple with a tariff of at least 25% if it does not manufacture its iPhones in the U.S., ramping up pressure on the tech giant to secure more domestic production. On True Social, Trump said, "I have long ago informed Tim Cook of Apple that I expect their iPhones that will be sold in the United States of America will be manufactured and built in the United States, not India or any place else. If that is not the case, a tariff of at least 25% must be paid by Apple to the U.S." I just want to point here, Bloomberg is saying building iPhones from scratch in the U.S. would be extremely difficult, even for a cash-rich company like Apple, with a lack of domestic engineering and manufacturing talent, making that nearly impossible in the short run. And look, I got to say, Bloomberg, you're full of shit this morning. Sorry. That is just factually wrong. There is no lack of engineering talent. There is no lack of manufacturing talent in the United States. It's just more expensive. All right. It's not that it doesn't exist. It does. All right. American engineer talking here. Yes, there are engineers in America, believe it or not. There are colleges that train engineers in America. There are people who would do this work in America if you pay them to, but it's a lot cheaper to just hire people in India. Apple has done this for years. It's not that they can't, it's that they won't. Now, look, the biggest target in this trade war has been China so far, right? There's been this geopolitical / military angle to the trade war because we're trying to reshore manufacturing of critical things that the Chinese would cut us off from if they ever invaded Taiwan. But the other target in the trade war hasn't been Europe. It hasn't been Vietnam or all these other countries. The other target has been American companies who refuse to hire Americans. Now, these are companies that just love to weigh in on who gets to use the ladies' room, or they love to weigh in on whatever protest is happening on whatever campus anywhere else. But when it comes to actually hiring Americans, oh, no, too expensive. Sorry, we got to go overseas to do that. Really? Apple's got the money. They could do it. They just won't do it. And to be honest with you, it's going to be a lot more expensive than 25%. That's the thing. Are American companies willing to pay that? Probably not. Are Americans willing to pay more for iPhones? Probably not. Everybody talks a big game when it comes to reshoring manufacturing and making the country more secure from outside influences. But when it comes time to pony up for that, nobody really wants to. It's always somebody else that needs to pay for it. Isn't that funny how that works that way? Anyways, Apple this morning down 3.1%, $194.98. That's off by about $6.40 on that threat of tariffs for Apple. And again, guys, we talked about this one in the monologue. Nuclear stocks surge on report of Trump executive orders to boost the industry. This one is expected. It hasn't been issued yet. Shares of nuclear power companies surged in pre-market trading after a report that U.S. President Donald Trump would sign executive orders as early as Friday to jumpstart the industry. Trump is expected to streamline the regulatory process for new reactor approvals and enhance fuel supply chains, Reuters reported, citing 4 sources familiar with the matter. U.S. power consumption is expected to touch record highs in 2025 and 26 after stagnating for nearly 2 decades as power-hungry data centers to AI and crypto miners plug into the grid. That's something we talked about yesterday, how aluminum miners or aluminum smelters had no power available. They were going out of business because AI keeps bidding up the energy prices. Our confidence in the AI revolution data center build-out is increasing under the Trump administration, with nuclear energy ultimately playing a key role in powering data centers, Wedbush analyst said in a note. And again, guys, I am less excited about this executive order as it comes to nuclear, and I am more excited / worried about this one. This has more to do with it here. Supreme Court insulates the Fed as it backs Trump firing of agency leaders. This one came out yesterday. The Supreme Court on Thursday strongly suggested that Federal Reserve Board members would have special protection against being fired by a president in a ruling that, for now, allows President Trump to fire 2 members of other federal agencies' boards. The Supreme Court said in its ruling that they disagree with arguments by Gwen Wilcox of the National Labor Relations Board and Kathy Harris from the Merit Systems Protection Board that their challenges to the terminations necessarily implicate the constitutionality of for-cause removal protections for members of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors or other members of the Federal Open Market Committee. The Federal Reserve is a uniquely structured quasi-private entity that follows the distinct historical tradition of the first and second banks of the United States, the majority ruling said. So, I mean, look, the Supreme Court's saying Trump can fire anybody except the Federal Reserve. And again, you got to say, well, why the Fed? Who's really pulling the strings over there? Who is in charge? People who can afford to have their names and identities and faces scrubbed from the internet. That's who. Well, nobody really knows who actually rules. Technically, the Fed is owned by its member banks, but who controls them? Again, nobody really knows. But the big implication here is that the NRC is not mentioned, and thus the NRC applies in the category of the NLRB and the Merit Systems Protection Board and has not been specifically called out like the Federal Reserve has, which means President Trump, if he is unsatisfied with the lack of progress in the nuclear industry and getting new reactors licensed and built, he can fire the guys in charge of issuing the licenses and replace them with somebody more accommodating, which that is the single biggest hurdle that is holding back nuclear energy. It is the regulatory framework that is absolutely smothering the industry. It is, I mean, guys, I've said this a few times on this channel. For every yellow hard hat at a nuclear plant, there are 5 to 10 guys in white hard hats holding a piece of paper, some of them holding it upside down, saying, oh, no, you can't turn that wrench that way. Turn it clockwise. And then another guy says, turn it counterclockwise. And then the third guy says, let's have a committee meeting to hear the pros and cons of turning the wrench clockwise versus counterclockwise. And the guy in the yellow hard hat is just sitting there like, lefty loosey, righty tighty, guys. Why are we even talking about this? And meanwhile, every single one of them is collecting a 6-figure salary while they sit there and debate. I kid you not, that is the kind of ridiculous administratum that happens in the nuclear industry. And the NRC is the sole cause of that. So are they going to change that now? I don't know. But the president can fire them and replace them if he doesn't like it. And again, that has risk too. If you put in people who are not at all careful, you risk catastrophe. And you'll sink the nuclear industry for another 30 years if there's another big accident like that. So, you know, this is a double-edged sword. And then who knows, we could get President Kamala next time, and she just decides, I'm going to put the Sierra Club in charge of the NRC, and now you've got no nuclear plants. So there's pros and there's cons here. All right, We got two more here we're going to talk about. Nissan considers the sale of headquarters in Yokohama. Nikkei says, we've been hearing a lot about Nissan this year. This car maker is in big trouble, guys, and now they're looking to sell their big office building. Nissan Motor is considering selling its headquarters in Yokohama City as part of the restructuring plans that include the closure of 7 factories worldwide, the Nikkei Daily reported on Friday. Those 7 factory closures had been previously announced, so that's not new. It's the headquarters being sold is new. The headquarters asset value is estimated to be about $700 million, with proceeds potentially covering restructuring costs, the report said without citing sources. I don't know how accurate that $700 million number is. I haven't read much about commercial real estate in Japan, if they're having the same problems they're having in the US and China. I'm guessing they are. So question that $700 million number. Nissan plans to use a sale and leaseback method in which it would enter into a lease agreement with the buyer and continue to use the facility. Now that right there shows you how desperate this company is. Sale leaseback agreements. We've talked about these on the channel a lot. That is where companies go to die. That is the signature play, the trump card of every private equity firm that buys a business. They enter into a sale leaseback agreement with the real estate. They pay themselves big dividends with that money. And then, of course, the company eventually goes bankrupt because it can't afford the rent payments on the building that it used to own. So one of two things is happening here. Nissan is going to use the proceeds of this money to either pay the executives, big golden parachutes as the company goes bankrupt, or they're going to use the proceeds to try to stay alive for just a little bit longer while they hopefully find a buyer. Nissan has been in talks with a couple of different companies over the last 2 years to arrange a buyout. All of those talks have failed. But now, since Nissan is selling this building and renting it back, they've got the cash to survive a little bit longer, but their rate of cash burn is going to be dramatically increased because now they've got rent payments, so they're eating their own tail to survive here. That means they are on life support. This company, if they don't find a buyer soon, they will cease to exist. And in a shocking turn of events, Microsoft-backed Builder.ai is set for bankruptcy after their cash was seized. Oh my God, an AI company was a fraud. Say it ain't so. Yep, it was. Builder.ai, the British AI startup backed by Microsoft and the Qatar Investment Authority, is filing for bankruptcy after the CEO said a major creditor had seized most of its cash. Viola Credit, which provided $50 million in debt to the software firm last year, has seized $37 million from Builder.ai's accounts, leaving the company with just $5 billion. Builder.ai CEO Manpreet Ratia said in an interview Tuesday, without giving a clear reason for the seizure fraud, Viola didn't immediately respond to a request for comment left after business hours. The proceedings mark a stunning fall from grace for a company that 2 years ago raised a $250 million funding round led by the Qatar Investment Authority, one of the world's biggest sovereign wealth funds. Microsoft also made an equity investment in 2023, as did SoftBank. Less than 2 months ago, Builder.ai confirmed to Bloomberg News that it had forced to lower sales estimate provided to investors and had hired auditors to examine 2 years of accounts. This came in response to questions from Bloomberg about former employees' concerns that the company inflated sales figures. Oh my goodness, accounting fraud at an AI company. Shocked face. Yeah, Builder.ai's missteps showed the risks inherent in the rush to back promising AI startups as investors seek to replicate the success of heavyweights such as OpenAI and Anthropic. After the debut of ChatGPT, London-based Builder.ai rode investor enthusiasm for AI to attract big-name investors. The firm's founder, Sachin Dev Duggal, stepped down as CEO in February and was replaced by Ratia. At the time, Builder.ai also cut its board to 5 seats from 9 and asked Duggal to relinquish 4 of the 5 seats he controlled. Builder.ai was one of those mechanical Turk companies. They claimed that their artificial intelligence was building apps, and what was really happening is they were hiring cheap labor in Ukraine and in India to build the apps for them. And of course, they were also inflating their sales figures, committing accounting fraud. Look, all the things that you hate about the AI bubble all packaged up into this little package, and now they're bankrupt and they lost all their money. So, gee, who could have seen that coming besides nobody? And once again, guys, if you're interested in yet another AI fraud, I put a link down in the description below to that video I did yesterday about this groundbreaking study in material science research at MIT, how scientists, fake scientists, with AI tools discovered 44% materials and filed all these patents. Yeah, it was all fake. It was a big hoax. The AI bros are full of it. Anyway, check out that video, guys. I think you'll enjoy it. I had a little bit of fun with that one. And I just want to say thank you so much to my man, Mish the Mod. What's going on, brother? Mish, by the way, awesome job this morning. Thank you for your quick pivot and quick thinking today. We had a lot of technical issues. My power went out. Our typical messaging platform wasn't working this morning, so our morning routine was interrupted. But Mish was very quick to adapt. Thank you, sir, for that. And also a shout out to my fellow researchers on Project Firefly. We made a mess in the thread this morning because Mish and I had to go in there to do that. But thank you guys for putting up with the mess we made in the place. Mish, fine job this morning. Also, Memorial Day on Monday. Have a great 3-day weekend. Yes, guys, since the markets are closed on Memorial Day, that means no show on Monday morning. I know. You're just going to have to struggle and get by without your morning melon head fix. But Tuesday, we'll be back at the regular time. Thanks again, Mish. M&J, thank you for everything you do for the channel and for gifting 20 Nobody Special Finance memberships. Welcome to the Melonheads, you 20 lucky recipients. Don't forget to say thank you to M&J in the comments. Thanks, M&J, so much. And a reminder, guys, that when you are a Melonhead member, you get one free super chat a month. So if you want, use that, and I will read and respond to your questions on the air. And Brad, welcome to the Melonheads as well. Thank you so much for supporting the channel, Brad, and may all your wildest dreams come true now that you are a Melonhead member. Thank you, sir, for supporting the channel. Evan Francis, thank you, sir. He says, tariffs for breakfast, brunch, 11 C's, lunch. What about second breakfast? Yes, I see what you're doing there. It was one of the underfoots. I can't remember what. No, Fool of a Took. What was it, Peregrine? I don't know. It was one of the hobbits that said that. You know, it's funny you should mention this, Evan. Almost every day, you know, I get hungry around 10 o'clock, and Gigi will be like, oh, but I made you breakfast. And all of a sudden I'll say, but what about second breakfast? Yeah, I quote that line in the movie on an almost daily basis. So it's funny you should mention that. That's right, tariffs. I hope you want tariffs for breakfast, guys, because that's what you're getting this morning. A lot of uncertainty, man. They're going to make a mess with this stuff. Again, we're back to this sledgehammer surgery with tariffs this morning. Thank you, Evan, for supporting the channel, sir. Becky Heffernan, thank you so much for supporting the channel. It says, we have a president who has bipolar disorder. I think the president's got tripolar disorder, to be honest with you. We got a lot of polar going on here. Yeah, look, volatility, name of the game here, guys, right? That's his style. He is not a traditional politician. He does not think first. He fires from the hip. He uses harsh language. He says mean things. He posts mean tweets. This is very much his style. And we all knew this when he got reelected. We knew this was coming. So surprised face right here. Thank you, Becky, for supporting the channel for 12 months. And Donald Krasnov, Craig Unger's book, Russian KGB, Cold War Never Ended, Eastern Bolshevism, Cabal, NWO, China Dynasty 2, Want to See U.S. destroyed. Oh, my God. This hat just does not cover. Man, you touched a lot of bases there. Can we throw some MK Ultra, some CIA, some Mossad in there, the obligatory Mossad? I do think we missed a couple there, but you did touch a lot of bases there. Look, guys, it's the 2020s. And if you notice the invisible scoreboard behind me here, the conspiracy theorists are winning this decade. So no conspiracies are off limits this decade. I mean, calling something a conspiracy virtually guarantees it to be true in this decade. And therefore, I shan't dismiss any of these theories because that's just like there ain't enough wood to knock on in this decade, brother. Thank you, John, for supporting the channel, sir. Richard Bell says, will AI lead to many wars, drones, etc.? No regs? I don't know. You know, it's funny. I was talking to my friend Carl at Internet of Bugs yesterday. Fantastic channel, by the way. Carl does really good work over there. And I was giving him some feedback on a video that he was thinking about putting out. And he's kind of, he hinted at some of this in his video. And it was very thought-provoking. I hope Carl decides to put that video out. Carl, really good stuff, sir. AI could contribute to wars, but not the way you think. All of these algorithms and everything, they're making us hate each other, guys, not on purpose, but because that's what gets engagement. There's your attention is currency now, and it's reimbursed like currency. And so, look, I see this in my space. I see other YouTubers do this. YouTubers I like, YouTubers I don't like. They use clickbait. They use doomerism. They throw things in their thumbnails and in their titles that are misleading, but it works. It's what the algorithm pays them to do that. And I can tell you, I would have a hell of a lot more views. I'd have a hell of a lot more subscribers, and I'd make a hell of a lot more money if I did that. I choose not to do it at great expense. But this is what the algorithms reward. They reward the things that make you angry and elicit the emotional response, to the point where people are manufacturing fake emotional responses, and it's making us break ourselves up into groups and hate each other more than we normally do. We do have a pre-existing disposition to this kind of behavior, but these algorithms make it worse. And AI is going to make these algorithms much better and more efficient at doing this. Yeah, that could lead to wars. And Carl did a very thought-provoking video on this. I really hope he puts that video out, Carl. That was really good. The drones, AI is already in drones. I mean, it was Scale AI is one of those companies. It's teaching AI how to tell the difference between a tank and a pickup truck and aerial photos by hiring people at cubicle farms just to say, this is a tank, this is a gun, this is a man without a gun. And the drones are learning from it. That's how Scale AI makes their money. No regulations. Look, the regulations cut either way. Regulations are only as good as the POS who's writing them. So no regs depends on the guy who's writing the regs. So I don't think that. But yeah, Richard, AI could lead to more wars, and it's already being used in war. Absolutely. Yeah. It's not, like any new technology, the military gets it first. That's what's happening. Thank you, Richard, for supporting the channel. Russ, the beekeeper, what's going on, Russ? He says, can't fire the Fed, then it must become irrelevant. Yeah, if you can't fire them, then who has oversight over them? The Senate? Gag me. Have you seen the Senate lately? The Senate, oh, by the way, the MIT researcher with his fraudulent study, he used to work at the Senate and he used to work at the Fed. Oh my God, I love this kid. I love this story. It's so amazing. But yeah, if you can't fire them, if they're not answerable to the president who is answerable to the voters, then who is the Fed answerable to? It's a good question. I'm not saying the president should be able to fire them. I'm not saying the president should be able to just put a monetary dove in place. But if nobody can fire them, then they have unlimited power. Maybe we should just not have a Fed. Whoa, crazy idea. We went, 150 years without a Fed and everything was okay? Just a thought. Thank you, Russ. And thank you, Steve Woitis says the tinfoil hat, tariffs announced, markets down. Tariffs eased, markets up. First, you need a post on True Social telling people to buy stocks. Tariffs announced, markets down. Are we being played here? Yes. Yes, Steve, you are being played here. Abso-freaking-lutely. Look, we have presidents are now jawboning markets. Sign of the times, guys. Sign of the times. And they're having meme coin dinners where if you buy my shit coin, you can have access to the president. And then hey, if you're at the dinner, say, hey, I'm about to tweet to buy stocks. So go ahead and buy stocks, guys. Like it's the 2020s. I guarantee you this crap is happening. It's fraud is everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. Thank you, Steve, for supporting the channel. Armando Reyes says, we are getting so very close to that one thing that sets off a chain reaction. What will it be? I don't know. Maybe another Star Wars movie. They've been pretty bad lately. Look, anything. I mean, it's hard to predict that the butterfly effect, right? But I mean, honestly, the writing is on the wall. The simplest answer is Taiwan. All right. Taiwan has been almost the singular focus of the entire Communist Party infrastructure in China for the last 10 years. They are building ships, they are building missiles, weapons, planes, all for the sole purpose of conquering that island. I don't think we need to be too creative. I don't think we need too much of this to say that it's going to be Taiwan is going to be what ignites that. And I think every day that looks increasingly likely. Thank you, Armando, for supporting the channel. Uncle Fester says, happy Friday, Jack. Happy Friday to you as well. LOL on the formula Turner Rogers put in the beginning of his scam report. Oh, yeah. Greek letters, baby. I mean, you can tell how intelligent somebody is. Just it's directly proportional to the number of Greek letters they use in their math. Isn't that true? Sigma, alpha, beta, gamma. Oh, automatically smart. Seems that's what he did. Question is, I really wonder, and somebody posted this in the comments, did Aiden Turner Rogers use AI to make up his fake paper about AI? Probably. I don't know. But there were so many red flags, like the biggest one, how many labs could possibly fit the description of the report that he was describing, of the research he was describing? Like only a handful of labs in the world fit that description. Anybody who bothered to ask could have found out if this was true or not. And the fact that this was a 2-year study and the kid was only a first-year PhD student, which means somehow this kid began his PhD research before he became a PhD student. What incredible foresight. Or maybe the kid was just full of shit. And look, nobody asked any questions. National Bureau of Economic Research, the American Enterprise Institute, the U.S. Patent Office, Nobel Prize winning economists, MIT, the Wall Street Journal, The Economist, everybody ran with this stuff. Nobody did any checking at all. But, I'm just a Twitter rando. What do I know, right? What do I know? Thank you, Uncle Fedster, for supporting the channel. ND22121, you binary melonhead, you. Great MIT video, absolute solid reporting and journalism. Thank you, sir. I learned so much from you. I can imagine lots of long editing and love those short videos. Thank you so much, ND. That was a lot of reading, that one. It was a fun weekend reading 77 pages of a report that is fake. And you're like, the whole time you're sitting there saying to yourself, why am I reading this crap? Number one, it's really hard to understand. Number two, it will not make sense because it's not real. But that's where the juice is. That's where the juice is, baby. You got to go elbow deep in that stuff. And then when I found the thing about the fake website, how Corning sued him because he tried to create a fake website to make it look like Corning was the lab that he did this research at. It's crazy. It almost would have been less work to just do the study. Like this was such an elaborate fraud. It would have been easier just to not be a fraud. Thank you for the kind words, Andy. Appreciate the super chat, the support of the channel. And Pigo says, MVGA VIX also love uranium. Yeah, I got a lot of uranium bulls on this channel. Shout out to my buddy Dan. I know he likes the uranium stocks. I haven't looked at the VIX, but I'm sure it's spiking right now. And MVGA, I'm not familiar with that name. I'm not going to do individual stocks here because when you look too much into obscure names like that, people accuse you of talking your book and things like that. I just don't want to go down that route. And let's be honest, this isn't really a trading service. That's not what I do here. There's plenty of guys out there who are like, sign up for my course or sign up for my newsletter and I'll give you all my trades for just $5,000 a month. And then you never hear. It's not what we do here. But thank you, Pigo, for supporting the channel, sir. And KDM says, not sure who runs the Fed, but the Fed runs the Supreme Court, apparently. Fed probably runs everything. Or I should say, whoever runs the Fed probably runs everything, right? What's the famous quote from James Carville? He said, when I die, I hope I can be reincarnated as the bond market because the bond market intimidates everyone. Well, the Federal Reserve can control the bond market and the president can't fire the head of the Fed. So whoever controls the Fed is therefore intimidating everybody in the world. Yeah. Apparently they control everything, even the Supreme Court. I don't know. I have mixed feelings on that. I don't think the president should be able to fire the Federal Reserve chair or the Federal Reserve governors because then you could just put a dove in there and print money anytime you want. I don't think you should be able to do that. But I also don't think something with that much power should exist without any check on that power. The Senate is asleep at the wheel. They are not fit to control and oversee that power. So maybe that power just shouldn't exist. Maybe we should just get rid of it, not have it. Thank you, KDM, for supporting the channel. John says, The Creature from Jekyll Island. It's on my list. I have not read it, but I have heard. What's the guy's name? Oh, I can't remember the author's name. Really sharp guy, though. Even, I tell you, he's up there in years, but he is not to sound like the media, but he literally is sharp as a tack. Okay, he actually is. Oh my God, I can't say that. That's so bad. Yeah, but there's no do-overs in live shows. But I can tell you, what the heck was his name? Son of a gun. I can't remember his name. I heard him talk at the Silver Symposium 2 years ago. He is very impressive. He's a very thoughtful, very impressive guy. And that book is absolutely on my reading list, although my reading list is very long, guys. And I spend so much time reading news reports that there's not much time for the pages. I've got vacation coming up at the end of June. Maybe it'll be The Creature from Jekyll Island that I read this year on vacation. Thank you, John, for supporting the channel. Jacques Mahon says, Secrets of the Federal Reserve book, ownership of the Fed, Citibank 8%, Chase 14%. Most New York banks and EU banks are majority. It sounds like the same people who created the Bank for International Settlements, right? They, with a capital T. That's who controls the Fed. But who controls those banks? Legit question. Thank you very much, Jock Mahone. Harmonair LLC says the salted pork is particularly good. I don't know what we're talking about, the salted pork here. Is this a movie reference? Somebody finally made a movie reference that went right over my head. I don't know what we're talking about here, Harmonair LLC. Somebody let me know what we're talking about in the comments because I missed this one. Sorry, guys. We're getting up there in minutes. We've been going for a while, and I'm losing it here. John says, no clickbait. Thank you, Jack. Where do I get a hat? I used to have a merch vendor who made the hats for me, but that merch vendor was a crook, was taking people's money and not sending them their merch. Also, they owe me money too. It's been over 2 years and I haven't gotten paid by them. So right now I don't have a melon merch vendor, but I am working on a new one. It is on the list along with reading The Creature from Jekyll Island. Thank you, John, for supporting the channel. And again, the salted point. Edward Griffin, thank you. G. Edward Griffin, Scott W. said it in the chat. Thank you so much. Yeah, guys, we've been running pretty long. I think we gotta cut this one off here. Hey, look, thank you so much, guys, for all the generosity in the super chats. Thank you guys for having your coffee with the melon heads. Shout out to my magnanimous melon heads on Patreon and YouTube. Looking forward to talking to you guys at 2 p.m. this afternoon for our weekly get together on Zoom. Links down below to all that good stuff, along with the link to that MIT video that you're going to want to check out. I had some fun making that one. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. I love you guys. Everybody, till next time, live small and dream big.